Okay, hi. I'm Michael O'Brien. I'm here with my dad, Karen O'Brien. We're going to be talking generally in this interview about the TSA and how they work and flying in general, both mentally and physically with the TSA pre 9/11 and after 9/11. So, Dad, could you please just state your background and your qualifications for this interview?
Sure. Sure. My name is Kieran O'Brien, as Michael said. I work for a company called Avnet Consulting, and what we do as a business is we install specific software around the United States. So basically, what my job is to travel out on a Monday and come back on a Thursday to different client sites across the country to install software within their environment. So I've been doing this for the last 20, 22 years of traveling roughly 8 to 9 months out of the year, Monday through Thursday. So I've traveled out of many airports throughout the country, landed many airports throughout the country. So I'm pretty versed on traveling different airports throughout the country.
Okay, yeah, thank you. And so we're going to start with 9/11, basically, because, you said you've been traveling for 20 years or so. So you obviously know the difference between, pre 9/11 and after 9/11. Could you just state, the difference between the two and, not just with security and TSA, but as well as, like, how people feel with flying in general?
Sure. Good question. Prior to 9/11, traveling was pretty laid back. There were times when pre 9/11, I was late for a flight, and I could actually take a taxi to the airport, jump out at the curb, and basically go from the curb to the plane with basically waving my boarding pass in front of security and the people who were processing the people boarding on the plane, and show no ID. So basically, I could just have anybody's boarding pass and jump on an airplane. They never really checked it. After 9/11, it completely went the other way, where it really got very, very intense when you were traveling. I had the unfortunate had to travel right after 9/11, and as we were traveling I was out of JFK. You could actually see the army were there with their. They weren't in not a defensive or not an easy position. They were in a very defensive position. They had their fingers on their guns, and it was pretty intense traveling right after 9/11. In fact, it got so intense. They didn't allow people to carry nail clippers and all that good stuff. But that was just the physical part of before, running around and being able to get on pretty easy, to after, where it went completely opposite, where they looked at every single thing. That was like the physical part, but emotionally too. Before 9/11, nobody really thought about anything happening on an airplane. You hear about it in other countries, but when it came to your doorstep after 9/11, it added more stress to the travel environment, where now you were thinking about, is my plane going to be hijacked, or is anything going to happen, on top of the stress of regular business travel. So there was a lot more added stress after 9/11 when you traveled.
Yeah, now not just that, but also like the years to come after 9/11 died down. The mindset probably was the same, you could say, but what mindset is there nowadays? Considering we haven't had something like this happen in a very long time. How do Americans feel, flying just in general now? I mean, from your perspective and your experience while flying.
It's another good question. From my perspective, the mindset is that it's always in the back of your mind. There's always that awareness when you travel, when you're traveling through an airport, especially with before. Yeah, there weren't as many signs up for, if you see something, call it out. If you see a bag that's left on the ground, don't be afraid to, approach somebody and say, "Hey, there's a bag left on the ground." So it's still there. Has it waned in any way? I really don't think so. I don't think that people have let it go. I just think that it's in everybody's mind, especially my mind when I'm traveling, that you're always on the lookout for something. I am, because we travel on a weekly basis, and you have to be cognizant, and you have to be aware of your surroundings because of what happened on 9/11. It's always there.
Yeah, that's great. Now, obviously, it's good to know this stuff, because going into the TSA, the TSA's job obviously is to protect, the people flying in the country and all that stuff. Now, could you briefly touch on the changes that you saw when it came, pre 9/11 and post 9/11, basically just with the TSA? Obviously.
Sure. Well, the TSA wasn't really quoted, wasn't around pre 9/11. The Transport Safety Administration, I don't think, wasn't around. You would have, you would go through security.
I think, didn't you say it was private before, and then it turned into government after? I just wanted to remind you that's all.
Well, yeah, it was. What happened was after 9/11 happened, they brought in the TSA, they formed the TSA, and it was actually a private group that they employed the U.S. government. And there was so much happening where there was so many things going through, and there was different standards at different airports, there was different security procedures. The government stepped in and they made the jobs government jobs, and then they had a standard procedure that they could implement at all the airports.
Okay, great. Now, going to today, you obviously still interact with the TSA, as you have for the past 20 years. Nowadays, do you feel as though the TSA are professional, effective? The TSA's job isn't only to, keep the skyways safe, but that's their main job. But as well, ease the minds of the flyers and to make them feel safe. Because if they don't feel safe, it makes a much more tense environment. Everything, it becomes more dangerous just in general. So, do you feel as though they're effective in both the job of keeping the people safe and ease their minds a little bit?
I think the awareness of having the TSA around is good for people traveling, because they're aware that the TSA is there. They're aware that the TSA is watching, and also there are things happening within the TSA that, as far as I know, I'm not an expert in the TSA, but we're told that they have other things going on that we're not aware of, besides just the physical presence of having a TSA agent at the gate. But it is very reassuring when you're boarding, when they're processing people, when you see 4 or 5 lines of people. Or 4 or 5 lines of people boarding planes, where there's 3 or 4 TSA agents on each line, processing people, putting them through the scanners or putting them through the sniffers. It is very reassuring, I will say that. But I've also noticed during the course of the years of travel that it's become, in certain areas, it's become very rote, where they just process you and send you through, and process you and send you through. And it looks like they're doing it by numbers. What I mean by that is that it looks like they take every 10th male, pat him down, every 10th female, and pat him down. And they're not actually, looking at people who might be, somebody who's going to commit a crime. So it just looks like it's getting very lackadaisical, where they're not putting as much effort into processing the people getting on as they did.
All right, great. Now, I've got a report here from the Star Ledger. Being from New Jersey, you obviously know what the Star Ledger is. About Newark Airport. They found that 16.7% of the time that a pat-down occurs, there's a procedure to it. A TSA agent only properly conducts that pat down 16.7% of the time. As well, they did a stress test, and they found that the TSA let through or only acted on a quarter of banned items going through the scanners which is ludicrous. And Flight 93 came out of Newark during 9/11. You fly out of there all the time, being from New Jersey. How does this make you feel about the TSA there? And were you aware of this? Did you have any idea this was going on?
No, not really. And I'm kind of shocked at the low numbers that you're saying that the Star Ledger came up with when they did their stress test. I do travel out of Newark fairly regularly and out of Philadelphia, but out of Newark, you know what? There are times that stuff has gotten through that I haven't taken out of my bags taken out of my bag that I should have. There's times that I have had stuff in my bag that they've caught. So I would, now that you bring up those statistics, I kind of believe it that, they do miss a lot of what goes through. And, when they do a pat down, I've been patted down multiple times. I must have a guilty face, but I've been patted down multiple times by the TSA. And when I did it, they were not even looking at me. They were looking around and talking. And, you have to put your arms out like in a crucifix position, and they run their arms all over you and up and down your legs. And, what, I don't know if they were feeling for it. And it just, I didn't get the impression that they were taking it seriously. And then other times where I've been patted down and fully wanded. So sometimes it's hit or miss. Those figures are startling regarding the amount of or the lack of accuracy in their with their stress test.
Okay, now great. The USA Today talked about pre-checks in an article. Okay, I personally don't know about pre-checks. If you could, being an experienced flyer, could you explain what a pre-check is, and how do you feel about it, and do you feel as though it's doing its job? Because USA Today said that the TSA told them that these full body scanners and wands and wave downs are all going to be a thing of the past with these new quote unquote pre-checks. So could you please just quickly describe it and give me your feelings on it?
Sure. There's, as far as I know, there's two types of pre-checks, as far as I know. One of them is a service that you can pay for, that you submit your details to a specific company or agency, and they give you they go through a clearance with you with your details, and you're issued a specific card that you can actually go through expedited checking. So you don't have to go through the normal checking that a normal person would do. So you can be processed in a more expeditious manner if you're pre-checked. There's also another pre-check, but it's more of a pre-spot check, where you can be down and already checked through security, be waiting on your flight, and they have these mobile pre-checks that wander the airport, where they will go to a specific flight, and as you're boarding, they will pull you out to do another pre-check, and they'll swab your hands down to make sure you weren't handling explosives, and they will go through your bags to make sure that they have that you haven't any illegal or any substances or any contraband or whatever word you want to put on it that you're bringing on the plane. But there again, I've traveled out of Newark extensively, very regularly, for a specific project, and they only did it, the pre-check, the roaming pre-check, on one flight, and that was always the flight from Newark to San Francisco. So every morning, every Monday I would go down, you could guarantee that the rolling pre-check was going to be on this flight. So you could actually look and see that there was a pattern developing. So if you're somebody who could, sit there and watch the pattern going on, you could say, okay, they're only going to check this flight. None of the other flights within this terminal are being checked. And then if you had ulterior motives, you could, bring something else on a different flight, except that one flight, because that's the one they only ever went to every single Monday at like 6 o'clock in the morning.
Great. Yeah. Now, I just want to for the sake of the interview, state that people are paying to do this. It's not like it's not random. It's people that